We all have wishes. We all have dreams. From a young age, we're encouraged to believe in what we can become. But somewhere along the line, many of us confuse wishing with planning, dreaming with doing. We think wanting something badly enough should be enough, but it's not. The difference between people who set goals and those who achieve them is not intensity of desire, it's clarity of purpose. Let me ask you a question. When you set a goal, do you start by asking yourself what you want? Or do you begin with why you want it? Because those are two entirely different conversations. One is driven by impulse, by emotion, by the quick high of imagining a better life. The other is driven by intention. And intention, real, purposeful intention, is what transforms a wish into a plan. We live in a world obsessed with outcomes. Everyone's posting their results, their milestones, their highlight reels. But rarely do we stop to ask what started the journey. Why did they want that outcome? What were they trying to prove? Who were they trying to become? The problem with most goal setting is that we're too focused on the what and not nearly focused enough on the why. But the why is everything. It's the foundation. You can't build a skyscraper on sand. A real goal, a meaningful goal, isn't born out of comparison or envy. It's born out of alignment. Alignment with who you are and what you stand for. If you chase something because it looks good on paper or because it worked for someone else, it will break you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually the weight of misalignment always catches up. When you know your why, truly know it. You don't just set goals, you create them. You craft them with care because you understand the impact. The clarity that comes from purpose is powerful. It's the kind of clarity that moves you from I wish I could to I will. When you start with why, your goals are no longer based on what the world tells you to want. They're based on what you're here to do. Wishing is easy. It takes nothing from you. No risk, no exposure, no discipline. You can wish all day long and never break a sweat. But thinking, that's different. Thinking requires you to face reality. It asks you to look at where you are and take ownership of where you want to go. It demands that you stop waiting for permission. It pushes you to take the first step, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if you're afraid. No longer just a dreamer. You're a builder. And builders know that progress doesn't come from hoping something will happen. It comes from making it happen. So how do you start? You begin by painting a picture of the future. Not just a vague idea, a real, specific, sensory-rich vision of what success looks like. Not just the outcome, but how it feels, who you're with, what your day looks like, what your values feel like when they're fully lived out. That vision becomes your destination. It's your North Star. From there, you work backwards. You break the big picture down into manageable, achievable pieces. But here's where most people fail. They stop at the outcome. They write the goal down, maybe even build a vision board, but then they never ask, what am I willing to do every day to make this real? That's the difference between dreaming and thinking. Dreaming is a moment. Thinking is a system. Systems win where motivation fails. If you rely on motivation to chase your goals, you'll give up the moment things get hard. And they will get hard. You'll feel tired. You'll feel discouraged. You'll question if it's worth it. And that's when most people quit. Because they were counting on feelings instead of structure. But if you have a system, a set of habits, routines, and non-negotiables, you don't need to feel inspired every day. You just need to follow the plan. Let's be clear, this isn't about hustle culture or toxic productivity. It's about intention. Discipline isn't punishment, it's alignment in action. It's you saying, this matters so much to me, I'm going to build a life around it. There's one more element we don't talk about enough: accountability. You can have the clearest vision, the best system, and the strongest work ethic, but if you keep your goals to yourself, they remain fragile. We're not built to do everything alone. We thrive when we're seen, when someone knows what we're trying to do and they check in, not to judge us, but to remind us, to challenge us, to walk with us. So many people don't follow through, not because they're lazy, but because they're isolated. Share your goal with someone who believes in you. Not someone who will tell you what you want to hear, but someone who will hold up the mirror when you forget your why. Setting a goal is more than writing a sentence. It's an act of commitment. It's a decision to turn a wish into a strategy, to stop saying someday and start saying today. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as waking up 10 minutes earlier, or choosing the harder conversation, or saying no to the easy option. Small choices made consistently, driven by purpose, that's what separates thinkers. Because in the end, it's not about crossing off a list. It's about who you become in the process. Goals are not just about what you get. They're about what you give and who you grow into as a result. The goal itself may change, life may redirect you, but if your thinking is anchored in why, you'll always find your way back to purpose. So don't just wish, think. Think deeper. Think with clarity. Think with courage. And when you do, when you move from wishing to thinking, your goals stop being fantasies. They become your future. One choice at a time. One step at a time. One purpose-led life. We have this tendency to romanticize the dream. We talk about vision boards, manifestation, speaking things into existence. And while there's power in believing, belief alone is not enough. A dream is not a strategy. A wish is not a plan. If we truly want to bring our goals to life, we have to do something uncomfortable. We have to stop fantasizing and start thinking. Thinking is hard. It requires stillness. It demands honesty. And it asks something of us that wishing never does. Intention. Wishing is passive. It's something we do when we're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining a life where everything just falls into place. But thinking makes you confront the truth. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what's the gap in between? We often say we want change. We want to lose the weight, build the business, repair the relationship, write the book. But if we look closer, what we really want is the result of the goal, not the process that leads there. We want the reward without the responsibility. And that's where so many of us get stuck, in the illusion that wanting it enough is the same as preparing for it. To move from wishing to thinking, we have to turn dreams into direction. We need a map. And a map only works if you know where you're starting from. Too often, people set goals that don't match the reality of their lives. They aim high without anchoring themselves first. And without that grounding, the goal becomes a weight instead of a target. We chase an idea, not a future. Action doesn't mean you have it all figured out. It just means you've made a decision, that you've stopped floating and started steering. Even if the course changes, and it will, you're no longer waiting for life to hand you meaning. You're choosing it. You're creating it. Real thinking requires us to sit down and build something. It means asking, what needs to happen for this goal to become real? It's not about grand declarations. It's about systems, about behavior, about consistency. You can't think your way to a goal and then act your way around it. The action must align with the thought, otherwise you're just lying to yourself. It's so easy to get seduced by inspiration. We read the books, we watch the TED Talks, we underline the quotes. But inspiration without clarity is just noise. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't change our lives. Clarity does. Clarity tells us where we're going. Clarity cuts through doubt. Clarity gives us the ability to say no to distractions, to detours, to the things that don't serve our vision. And clarity isn't found in the rush. It's found in reflection. You get clear when you pause long enough to listen, not to everyone else, but to yourself. What do I truly want? Why do I want it? And am I willing to do what it takes to move toward it? The people who achieve meaningful goals aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They're the ones who build systems around their priorities. They wake up and do the work, even when it's boring, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one is clapping. Because they're not chasing approval, they're chasing alignment. And alignment is what gives our lives power. So many goals fall apart because they rely on willpower. And the unsuccessful ones go to the corner. Power is the spiritual God's. But willpower is like a battery. It drains. Systems are like solar panels. They recharge. If your plan to reach your goal depends on you always feeling motivated, you will fail. But if your plan is built around structure, around habits, around decisions made in advance, you will thrive even when you don't feel like it. It's in the structure where discipline becomes freedom. When you know what you're doing, when you've built the time for it, when you've removed unnecessary choices, it becomes easier to show up. The goal stops being a pressure point and starts being a process. One step. One habit, one day. That's what thinking gives you. It gives you traction. It moves you forward in reality, not just in imagination. It creates a feedback loop. The more you act, the more you learn. The more you learn, the better you adapt. And that adaptation builds resilience. You're no longer relying on hope, you're relying on design. There's something incredibly empowering about thinking clearly. You stop looking around for someone else to save you. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop blaming time or money or age or talent. You realize that the gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled by chance. It's filled by intention. Every meaningful goal asks something of you. It will ask you to let go of comfort. It will ask you to do things you've never done. It will ask you to trust yourself, especially on the days you feel like giving up. And when you stop merely wishing and start thinking, you'll be able to answer that ask with confidence. You'll know why you started, you'll know where you're going, and you'll know what it's worth. Thinking shifts your identity. It changes the way you see yourself. No longer are you someone who wants something, you're someone who is becoming something. You stop chasing outcomes and start embodying values. You stop measuring your life by results alone and start measuring it by intention, effort, and growth. And here's the beauty of it. When your identity changes, your outcomes follow. Not because you forced them, but because you became the kind of person who attracts them. Thinking creates alignment. Alignment creates action. And action over time creates results. We don't rise to the level of our dreams. We rise to the level of our clarity, our systems, our discipline. Wishing makes us feel good. And that difference, that shift from emotional escape to intentional direction, is the beginning of everything meaningful. So stop wishing for the life you want. Start thinking about the one you're willing to build. Because when your goals come from that place, not from fantasy, but from truth, they're no longer just ideas. They become decisions, and decisions shape destinies. Think for a moment about how most people approach their goals. They start with a statement like, I want to be successful, or I want to be healthier, or I want to be financially free. These are powerful desires. But without definition, they drift. They're like balloons with no strings, floating wherever the wind takes them. The truth is, if you can't clearly define what success looks like to you, you'll never know when you've achieved it. You'll always be chasing, always moving the goalpost, always feeling like you're behind, even when you're ahead. The path to achievement doesn't begin with ambition. It begins with clarity. You have to stop and ask yourself, what does this goal look like in real life? Not as an abstract idea, not as a social media post, but as a lived experience. What does your day look like when the goal is achieved? What are you doing? Who are you with? What values are you honoring? What trade-offs are you making? Until your goal becomes real in your imagination, it can't become real in the world. This is where thinking makes all the difference. When you stop and envision the actual life behind the desire, you gain perspective. You may realize the goal you thought you wanted isn't really yours. Maybe it came from pressure, maybe it came from comparison, but if the vision you create doesn't excite you, if it doesn't feel honest, you have to let it go. Because chasing a goal you're not aligned with will burn you out far faster than not having a goal at all. Once you have the vision, you begin the real work, not of pursuing the goal, but of preparing for it. Most people jump straight to action, but action without preparation leads to chaos. If you were going to climb a mountain, you wouldn't just show up and start hiking. You'd study the terrain. You'd pack supplies. You'd learn the risks. You'd build endurance. Reaching a meaningful goal is no different. Thinking gives you the time and space to prepare, to plan, and to build yourself into the person who can make it all the way. And that begins by reversing the process. Instead of thinking forwards, you think backwards. You start at the summit and work your way down. What had to happen for me to reach this goal? What did I do a week before, a month before, a year before? Who did I need to become to stand there at the top? That backward thinking gives you a path. It reveals the steps. Suddenly, what felt impossible becomes approachable. Not easy, but within reach. It removes the illusion of luck. It shows you the hours, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt. And in that truth, something remarkable happens. You stop idolizing the outcome and start respecting the process. Because the process is where transformation lives. The process is where identity is forged. But knowing the steps isn't enough. You have to bring those steps into your daily life. That's where structure comes in. So many people make the mistake of only scheduling what they have to do for others. Meetings, deadlines, appointments. But they never schedule time to build the life they say they want. And what's not scheduled doesn't get done. If your goal matters to you, it should live on your calendar. Not just in your head. The shift here is massive. When you bring your goal into the rhythm of your day, you begin to take ownership of your time. You start replacing vague intentions with specific commitments. I'll try to work on my side project becomes I'll spend 7 to 8 p.m. tonight developing that idea. That's not just time management, that's integrity. That's alignment between what you say matters and how you behave. It also means being realistic. People overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. Your job is not to do everything all at once. Your job is to do the right next thing. Consistency beats intensity. Doing a little bit every day beats doing everything all at once and burning out. This is how you build momentum. This is how you train your brain to believe, I follow through on what I commit to. The moment you start living this way, something fundamental shifts. You stop being results-driven and start being values-driven. The question changes from, did I hit the goal yet, to, did I show up the way I promised I would? And when you answer yes to that second question enough times, the first one starts taking care of itself. But none of this matters if you keep your goal a secret. There's power in accountability. When someone else knows what you're working toward, it creates a subtle but powerful pressure. Not pressure to impress, but pressure to stay honest. We're much more likely to give up on ourselves than we are to give up in front of someone who believes in us. Tell a friend. Share it with a mentor. Ask someone to check in. Not to judge, but to support. And when things get tough, and they will, you'll need that support. You'll need the reminder that this journey was never about perfection. It was about progress. That you don't have to be flawless. You just have to stay in the game. Thinking gives you the strength to stay grounded when the emotions get high. When doubt creeps in, when fear rises, when the voice in your head tells you to quit, thinking reminds you why you started. It reminds you that you chose this path and that it's worth finishing. The real magic of setting goals through thinking instead of wishing is that it transforms you. It takes you from someone who reacts to someone who creates. From someone who waits for opportunities to someone who builds them. From someone who hopes life will change to someone who chooses to change it. At the end of the day, a goal isn't a finish line, it's a direction. It's a statement to the world and to yourself about the kind of life you want to live, the kind of person you want to become. And when your goals are rooted in thinking, in clarity, in systems, and in truth, they're not just wishes anymore. They're blueprints. And from those blueprints, you can build anything. There's a moment that happens to all of us, a quiet moment. You're alone, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. And something inside whispers, you were meant for more than this. That voice isn't asking you to hustle harder or work longer. It's asking you to look deeper, to recognize that a life of meaning isn't given to you. It's shaped by what you choose to pursue. And yet, so many of us hear that voice and then do nothing. Not because we don't care, not because we don't want change, but because we don't know where to start. We get overwhelmed. We confuse motion with progress. We keep ourselves busy with tasks that don't matter, hoping they'll magically lead us somewhere worth going. But the truth is, until we stop and ask ourselves the hard questions, we're just running in circles. This is why setting a goal can feel terrifying, because in that one act, we're forced to admit what we really want. And for many, that kind of honesty is rare. It exposes us. If we admit what we want, we also have to face the fear of not getting it. And so we settle. We play it safe. We keep our goals vague. I just want to be happy. I want to make more money. I want to do something meaningful. These aren't goals. They're wishes with no compass. But here's the difference between a wish and a goal. A wish floats. A goal moves. And it moves us, but only if it's rooted in intention, not ego. A real goal isn't about proving something. It's about building something. It's not about the recognition. It's about the alignment between who we are and who we're becoming. That alignment only begins when we stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what kind of life do I want to lead? When you know what kind of life you want to live, the goals reveal themselves. They rise from within, not from outside influence. They're not based on trends or timelines. They're based on truth. The people who live with the most clarity didn't get there by accident. They spent time with their thoughts. They learned to sit in silence long enough to hear their own voice. Not the voice of the crowd, not the expectations of others, but the quiet certainty of purpose. They realized that setting a goal isn't about adding pressure. It's about creating direction. It's about choosing a path that honors your values and demands your growth. And that's why the most powerful goals aren't the ones that impress people. They're the ones that transform you. They ask you to become someone you're not yet. Not in a way that erases who you are, but in a way that calls forward the parts of you that have been dormant. Courage, discipline, patience, humility. These aren't things we're born with. They're things we develop by pursuing something that matters. And if it matters, you'll make time for it, not because it's convenient, but because it's essential. One of the most honest ways to measure whether a goal is real for you is to look at your calendar. Do you see it there? Do you see time carved out to think, to act, to grow in that direction? Because if you don't, the goal is just a nice idea, not a commitment. We often think commitment is about intensity, making bold declarations, working late nights, burning ourselves out in the name of progress. But real commitment is quiet. It's measured, not in bursts, but in rhythm. It's found in the person who shows up when it's boring, who takes small steps when no one's watching, who stays consistent when the excitement fades. This is where the thinking matters, because without it, we chase inspiration, not instruction. We move from one shiny idea to the next, but when we take the time to think, really think, we stop reacting to life and start designing it. We learn to work with purpose, not pressure. Designing your life around your goal means making trade-offs. It means saying no to good things so you can say yes to the right things. It means understanding that every yes has a cost, and if you say yes to everything, your most important work gets buried. Clarity is ruthless, in the best way. It simplifies, it sharpens, it protects your focus. So if your goal is to grow, to build, to evolve, you have to get specific. What does success look like, and what are the conditions that will get you there? Who do you need to become, and what behaviors reflect that identity? Thinking about your goal in these terms forces you to take ownership. No one else can do it for you. No one else will care as much as you do. And that's a gift, not a burden, because it means your progress is in your hands. The goal then becomes your responsibility, not in a way that drains you, but in a way that elevates you. You become someone who follows through, someone who honors their word to themselves. And from that foundation, confidence is built. Not confidence in results, but confidence in character. This is what thinking gives us. It reframes the journey. It removes the pressure to be perfect and replaces it with the power to be present, to show up day after day with integrity and intention, to move steadily toward a future that feels aligned even when it's uncertain. So don't wait for clarity to strike like lightning. Go out and earn it. Think deeply. Ask better questions. Be brave enough to write down what you really want. And then don't just chase the goal. Become the person who lives it. The future you want is not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice, discipline, and design. And it begins the moment you stop wishing for it and start thinking it into existence. We all crave meaning. It's hardwired into our nature. We want to know that our actions matter, that our time matters, that we matter. And so we dream. We envision futures where things are better, where we're healthier, more fulfilled, more successful. But for many, that vision remains exactly that. A dream. A picture in the mind, untouched by reality. Not because the goal is too far, but because the bridge between where we are and where we want to be has never been built. That bridge isn't motivation. It's not even discipline. It's intention. It's the deliberate act of turning your ideas into action. Because the distance between wishing and thinking is the distance between drifting and designing. Between hoping life will happen for you and choosing to take ownership of it. Too often, we confuse clarity with certainty. We think if we don't know exactly how everything will unfold, then we're not ready to start. But clarity doesn't mean knowing every step. It means knowing your next step. That's it. You don't need a 5-year plan, you need a 5-minute commitment. A small act that aligns with your direction, a behavior that says, I'm serious about this. When we're stuck in wishful thinking, we tend to wait for signs. We wait for the perfect timing, the perfect confidence, the perfect external validation. But action isn't born from certainty. It's born from courage. And courage doesn't mean fear is absent. It means you've decided that what you want matters more than the discomfort it takes to get there. The truth is, discomfort is not a sign you're off course. It's often the clearest indicator that you're growing. Every worthwhile goal demands that you leave comfort behind, that you stretch yourself into unfamiliar territory, not recklessly, but with resolve, with the quiet, persistent belief that you are capable of more than your circumstances suggest. And you are. But capability is not what separates those who succeed from those who don't. It's consistency. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you only show up when you feel like it, you'll lose to someone less talented who shows up every day. The people who achieve their goals aren't always the smartest or the fastest. They're the ones who keep going when others stop. They've made peace with the grind. They've embraced the boredom of repetition. They've built systems that support their ambition. That's what thinking does. It replaces intensity with consistency. It shifts your focus from the finish line to the system, from the result to the routine. Because when your actions are built on systems, progress becomes inevitable. Not linear, not glamorous, but inevitable. Every system you build becomes a vote for the person you're becoming. Every habit you nurture becomes a signal to your brain, this is who I am now. But systems aren't glamorous. They're not shareable. You don't get applause for writing in your journal every morning or for blocking 30 minutes to work on that project nobody sees. But those are the moments that matter. Not because anyone's watching, but because you are. And every time you honor your commitment to yourself, you build trust. Quiet, personal trust. The kind that says, I can rely on me. We live in a world obsessed with goals. But goals without identity are fragile. When your goal is just a number, a title, or an outcome, it's easy to abandon it when things get hard. But when your goal is tied to who you are, when it becomes an expression of your values, it gains resilience. You no longer chase it for approval. You pursue it because it aligns with your character. And that's the shift. You stop asking, what do I want to achieve, and start asking, who do I want to become? And once you answer that, the actions follow. If you want to be someone who creates, then you create daily. If you want to be someone who leads, then you lead where you are. You don't wait for the title. You don't wait for the spotlight. You start now in the shadows when it's hard, when no one notices. Because becoming happens in the doing, and doing requires energy. That's why the people who make real progress protect their energy as fiercely as they protect their time. They understand that burnout doesn't just come from doing too much, it comes from doing too much of the wrong things. So they get clear, they choose their battles. They say no with confidence, not guilt. Because every yes to something meaningless is a no to something essential. If you want your goals to move from thought to reality, you have to be ruthless with your priorities. Not in a cold or selfish way, but in an intentional one. You have to decide what matters most and then build your life around it. That means cutting distractions. That means simplifying. That means aligning your environment, your tools, and your routines with your mission. It means not just thinking differently, but living differently. And yes, you will have setbacks. You will stumble. There will be days where doubt feels louder than belief. But here's the thing. Setbacks are not the opposite of progress. They are part of it. Every time you fall and get back up, you're reinforcing the mindset that this isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about showing up when it's messy, when it's uncertain, when it's hard. That's the kind of thinking that turns goals into reality, not romanticized, not reactive, but grounded, thoughtful, relentless. You don't need to move fast. You need to move forward, inch by inch, day by day, with clarity, with character, with commitment. So stop waiting, stop wishing, start thinking, start designing, start acting. Your future isn't a lottery ticket. It's a decision. And it's made one small intentional step at a time.